I used to think pushing through was always the right answer, that working harder, being tougher, meant I was doing life right. But somewhere along the way, that strength started to feel like a cage. What happens when the path that made you successful starts to make you feel stuck? And are you brave enough to choose something different, even if it means disappointing the version of you that always pushed through? Let's get into it. Welcome to Star Potential, a podcast where we explore the meaning of our existence while having a few laughs and sometimes tears through stories from the road of life. I'm your host, Julie Jo Hughes. As a stage performer, my life is quite literally about song and dance. I believe that life here on Earth is a playground for discovery, not a contest to be won. We ask questions together like, how do I evolve my consciousness? And how do you sing a passionate ballad when there's an old guy in the front row with his balls showing? True story. Stick around for these fun conversations. Hi, welcome back to Star Potential. I'm your host, Julie Jo. Lately, I've been unraveling so many of the things I thought made me successful. My routines, my food, the stories I told myself about what I needed to do to stay safe and seen and in control. But they're all being questioned, and it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like I'm letting go of parts of myself that used to hold me together. But underneath all that unraveling, there's something honest, something softer, and way more aligned, I'm discovering. In today's episode, we're talking about what it really takes to break the patterns that we've clung to and to start listening to the voice underneath the noise, the one that's been quietly whispering, there's another way. Back in the fall of 2020, when the world was still in a state of unknown, we were still in the thick of global pandemic, lots of things were closed down, and it was sort of a forced pause for us all. It was a forced shift in direction, right? And for many people, it was sheer panic. Personally, it was one of the greatest things I had experienced in recent years. Those of you that are high achievers can certainly relate to the feeling that high productivity and busyness equates with self-worth, or at least we have a strong belief that it will lead to a sense of self-worth. We believe that if we are working hard towards something consistently and diligently, that we are working towards having worth. Maybe that's more money. It's achieving a title of some sort. It's proving to ourselves and others how worthy we are. But for me, the forced pause, when I could no longer look for something to fill that gap that I suddenly had, it felt like complete freedom. For the first time, probably since they were babies, I was completely present with my children. We created a little group. Our family last name is Vukojevic, and I created this little club called the Vukoje Explorers, and I created a hashtag and everything. And every day, because we live in Southern California and the weather is beautiful, the Vukoje Explorers would go outside while my husband was working, and the kids and I would just go on these explorations. We would look for bugs. We would watch the snails literally crawl across the blades of grass. We would explore the trails that were close to our apartment building and just see what we could discover. We would get down on our hands and knees and we would watch roly-polies interact with each other. Those are the little pill bugs. And there was no voice screaming in my ear, you should be doing something else. And any hint of that voice that did come up, I could say, what? What else should I be doing? What else could I be doing right now? There's no work to be had. There's nowhere to go because everything's closed. We can't go anywhere. Literally, the only thing I have to do right now is be present with these children. And it was so good for my soul. It was warm. It felt peaceful. It felt right. And for as long as I could remember, I hadn't had that sense of peace. It was a bit funny when it felt like everyone around me was saying that the world was ending and everything was completely spinning out of control. And for me, I felt more of a sense of peace and control than maybe I ever had before. It was an odd paradox. Now, my husband was also finding ways to bring in income for the family, but he had his own sense of peace as well. His belief system told him that not government, nor leaders, nor laws, nor anything outside of him determines his well-being and his destiny. And he believed that he would find a way to provide for his family. I probably shared that belief with him. I trust in him so much that we had a bit of an agreement that I would make sure the kids and their well-being was taken care of as far as the emotional side of things and the practical day-to-day. And he would take care of us practically and financially and make sure that we were all right. Now, throughout this time, I was having opportunities of performing and bringing in a little bit of income, but I truly was at peace knowing that in that moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. I would love to tell you that that was my spiritual awakening, and from there, I went on to blossom from that place of internal knowing that peace comes from within and not from without. But then this podcast probably wouldn't exist because that is not what happened. From there, the gap that I was used to always being filled with activity and stuff, even though it felt good to have that for the first time, it was completely unfamiliar to my belief system and my nervous system. And I got by on this feeling of peace and bliss for about 6 months, until which time I was invited to some online children's book party, and those were thriving during that time. I wanted many of the books, and the lady leading the party, who has grown into one of my good friends, but she explained to me how I could get lots of those books for free if I wanted to join the company and start doing what she did. And my ego, after a tiny bit of convincing, leapt at that opportunity to prove myself once again. I thought, if I'm not able to perform right now and prove myself in that way, perhaps I can prove myself through this company. And I had this underlying current all throughout my adulthood of if I could find something steady that doesn't require a lot of my mental effort to bring in consistent money, then I could truly focus on developing my artistic and creative endeavors. That was the belief that I held. Somehow, I didn't quite believe that aligning completely with myself could bring artistic and creative endeavors that would be enough on their own. Enough in what sense, right? Compared to what? I didn't know I was all in at first. It kind of developed over chasing dangling carrots of achieving this prize and this prize and this title and this title. And before I knew it, I got completely swept up in the validation, the worthiness that I felt in climbing the ladder of that company. And I was very good at it. It did bring me a lot of joy as well. But what I also noticed was that I was using it as a sort of avoidance for the gap that I had meaningfully and intentionally created to allow myself space to really be in alignment with my true desires. Now, I should also back up a bit and just mention that right before everything shut down at the beginning of the pandemic, I had spent the past, I think, about a year, taking voiceover classes, which I had started not long after we moved to California. So our family moved from New York City to Southern California in Orange County. We completely started over. I knew that I wanted to create opportunities for myself, and I thought it was a good life chapter to begin doing more voiceover work that I could do while the kids are in school. And then I'm still getting to perform creatively, but I'm not gone so many nights a week doing it that way. I could still be an actor, and I could grow my career in this way during the day, and I could still take the kids to school and pick them up every day. It's a brilliant plan, right? I had done voiceover work in the past. And so I began taking these voiceover classes and moved into the advanced classes. And now I was at the point where people are calling the school where I took the classes for recommendations. My instructors recommended me to a company, which got my foot in the door. I auditioned. I had callbacks, and I had landed a pretty significant narration and lead character roles in a voiceover opportunity. It was a pretty good opportunity. It was an ongoing opportunity, and I booked the job. I was really excited that I was going to have some consistent voiceover work, as consistent as any kind of work in our industry can be considered. And as soon as we started the work, about a week and a half later, that's when the world shut down. The project still wanted to continue as online entertainment, which the project that I was doing the voiceover for, this was for an international company, and they were creating educational content for children. And so this was an industry that was about to blow up and be super important during this time when all of our children are indoors and at home and not allowed to go to school. And it was a significant and wonderful opportunity for me. And what happened was, because we now had, the studio had to significantly reduce the number of people coming in and out, I actually ended up probably quadrupling, or even more than that, the amount of roles that I took on. They said, if you're up for it, we're going to consolidate people coming in and out of the studio. So we'd rather have you in here 6-7 hours a day, and you can take on all of these different roles and give us different voices. Suddenly, I was in a place where the rest of the world was shutting down and panicking, but I had this new source of income. I was also getting to have time to myself each day on the road, going to and from the studio. I was also having this amazing creative outlet where I got to explore and create all of these different characters. The company really gave me a lot of freedom to creatively concoct these different characters, and I would give them different ideas on the spot. They would tell me what they liked, and I would create another new character. Fast forward, this job went on for the next, I believe it was 2.5 years. It was a significant role for me. I am so grateful to that time that I had. Not only did I feel it was feeding my soul, but it was also feeding us financially. So many things. My mental health, I felt like I was getting to do what I loved. Again, I felt like I was having my cake and eating it too. And so when this opportunity presented itself, I did hesitate. My intuition said, I don't know, things are going well with staying in your lane, keeping your blinders on, trying to stay in the performing arts. But my belief system was not in alignment at this time with my intuition. It was saying, yes, but you've always needed a steady job to fall back on. And if this could bring you income during even the slow parts, because you never know when this work is guaranteed, then you should go after that. What happened over the next 3 years was, for a while, the jobs were consistently working with each other. But as the voiceover work began to fade for various reasons, I started pouring myself more and more into this sales and direct marketing job that I was doing, which I was also good at. But was it speaking to my soul? Not necessarily. I found that the parts that I really loved the most were connecting with the people, sharing what my kids loved about those books, and offering coaching and guidance to the ladies in my organization who I was training and who were on my team, and I was teaching them how to do what I do. What I started recognizing after a time was that I was expecting this job to fill something for me. Now, during this time, I had started my spiritual awakening. Fast forward to the time I lost my voice, and I went through so much contemplation during that time of how am I using my work to fill these perceived gaps that I have in my worthiness. And it didn't take long after I started clearing out some of the performing work to realize I was doing the exact same thing with my direct sales business. I was just applying that same filter I have of needing to prove myself through my work in this industry. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I started losing the spark in what I was doing there. I started craving a different type of audience where I could help people. I could really connect with people, but on topics and on subjects that are truly, truly important to me and also helping me to learn in my journey. I absolutely believe that that time that I spent in that industry was an amazing catalyst for me. I did so much self-development during those 3 years in that company. And it also brought me to the place where I realized I was ready to evolve into something a little more personal. And so as I decided to leave that part of my journey, I was in absolute peace that I wasn't leaving it because I didn't like it or I didn't enjoy it or it wasn't good enough for me. Instead, I was going on to something that I actually discovered about myself through doing that work. And so I believe that the chronological order in which all of this happened, now as I'm looking back, makes perfect sense. It was what I needed in order to be my catalyst to discover these things about myself. But what I really want to get to with the heart of this story with you today is that when we have a craving for a gap, for some kind of a pause, it can be really challenging to heed that call and to listen to that. And especially for those of you high achievers and those of us that equate our productivity with our worth, it can feel like we don't deserve a pause or a gap. But we have to see that we are something inherently worthy. We don't have to earn a gap. And if we are feeling a craving for that, that's our soul calling to us. The point is, when our soul is calling to us for a gap, it's uncomfortable. It goes against what seems logically reasonable. It's maybe, I'm at the top of my game. Why would I take a pause here? Or it's, I haven't reached the top of my game. Why would I pause now? I can't afford to stop. I've got to keep this momentum going. But then sometimes you can look back and say, what momentum? I realized I had been spinning my wheels in place for years. What kind of momentum is that? I was exhausting myself rather than growing. Now, it's not like it wasn't all a necessary part of my process, but once I truly heeded the call for that gap, that was when I really started to grow. When I was brave enough to allow myself the space and the pause, even though it was deeply uncomfortable at times. When people would ask, "What are you doing now? I heard you quit this thing. What are you doing now?" My ego wanted to say, "I'm doing something more important. I'm building something, but I'm just not sure what it is yet." Instead, I found myself bravely, for the first time, saying, "I'm not sure what's next, but this feels right now." You know those people who have been in a long-term relationship for maybe maybe they've been in the marriage for 35 years, and then suddenly they're in another relationship and they're getting married 2 weeks later. Is it truly that they really connected with that new person? Or does it play a factor that their nervous system craves familiarity and they needed to fill that gap because they don't know who they are without that gap being filled? It's not like we can make a blanket statement about that, but I think that does happen for us often, right? We're uncomfortable with unfamiliar, and our nervous system, our false intuition, tells us that it's not safe there. And we feel like the message we're getting is fill the gap, fill the gap. How about this? Yeah, that looks good enough. Let's take that. If you can truly be brave enough to mind the gap, to sit there in the uncomfortable, and to truly feel what you're feeling, that's what your soul is calling to you to do. It's calling to you to listen, to realign, to recalibrate. You know when you run out of ink and you're in the middle of a big printing job and it suddenly says you've got to run an alignment before you can continue printing more paper. And you're like, "I don't have time. My assignment's due in 2 hours. I got to print this now. I'm skipping the alignment." And the printer's never quite right. And eventually you have to go in and align the printer. Because if you rush right through the process and you just want to keep being so productive that you didn't take time to align things first, that only works for so long. Or maybe it never works at all. And our soul always calls us back into alignment. So before you rush into the next big thing, if you have honored that call to take a little gap, to clear some things, so you can clear the fog, clear your head a little bit, and really feel what it is your soul is calling to you, what it is your heart is telling you to make room for something different. If you can truly honor that, it is so worth it. Because when you take the time to align first, it's amazing how suddenly everything you wanted begins falling into your lap. It comes to you. You don't have to chase it. And you look around and go, "Oh my gosh, was it that easy the whole time?" Well, it's simple, but not easy, right? It does require bravery. It does require a listening to that call. It requires that you break the familiarity and allow yourself to feel uncomfortable in the unknown. Because if you can allow yourself to sit in that uncomfortability, you start hearing the whispers of your heart. And then they grow louder and more clear. And once you allow that pipeline of information to flow from the heart into your consciousness, you realize that it was there the whole time. You just tuned it out. You had the radio station tuned in to a fuzzy, staticky station. But now you've realized you had to adjust the dial a little bit. Once you can hear everything loudly and clearly, you know exactly what to do. You know exactly what you should be doing, because that pipeline is pristine. This is your opportunity to reset. But if you're in such a hurry to fill it with something menial, that inspiration that was calling to you will be lost. It's kind of a blown opportunity. And then you can get caught up in the mundane and the menial again. You will get caught in the cycle of whatever new thing filled the gap instead of truly listening to what your soul really wanted. If you can allow the room to be built for the bigger seed to be planted, it's going to be so worth it. But if you're so excited to catch all the little small fish that you can see, you'll never catch the big one. It's not easy, but it is simple. Allow yourself the gap. Get comfortable with feeling a little bit uncomfortable and keep listening to your body. Listen for your true intuition. Mind the gap. You know, as I sit here still navigating this unknown myself, I want to remind you, and maybe myself most of all, that growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from stepping bravely into the spaces that feel scary, uncertain, and even a little bit uncomfortable. So if you're feeling that tug, the one telling you that there's more to this life than just pushing through, lean into it. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't have to be perfect or fixed. This journey is about honoring yourself enough to say, I'm willing to feel, I'm willing to be brave, I'm willing to choose a new path, even if it feels unknown and I don't know what's coming from it. Thank you for being here with me today, for holding that space for yourself and for this collective journey. I'm excited to continue seeing what unfolds next. I would love to hear about a time when you respected that gap for yourself. I would love to hear your inspiring story of what it led you to discover. Shoot me a DM, comment on Spotify or YouTube. Share this episode in your social media or with a friend who can truly benefit from this. And I can't wait to hear your stories. Until next time, see you next week. Thank you for tuning into Star Potential with Julie Jo Hughes. If this episode resonates with you, I invite you to take 2 seconds, scroll down and click 5 stars on the rating. It's a fast and easy way to help the show gain exposure and momentum. If you're loving the show, I invite you to leave a quick review about what you love. Reviews are like gold to podcasters. And to show my gratitude, you'll be entered to win my monthly giveaway when you send me a screenshot of your review. I also made you a gift. It's a 9-minute simple gratitude meditation with singing to help you practice mindfulness. Just visit me on Instagram at @thejuliejo or find the link in the show notes. Thank you for your love and support. Until next time, keep shining your light. And that's a wrap.